Alright guys, HyDra Future again today. I hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. Going into this CDL season, we expected it to be a 4-team league. In many ways, it's been a 3-team league so far. We've had 3 events so far, 3 different winners. New York Subliners nowhere to be found, and of course the Los Angeles Thieves, despite theoretically on the cusp of that situation, have been some way off where they would like to be. Yes, their budgets were cut this season, but what do they need to do next year if they want to get back to championship winning ways as they did just a couple of years ago? What does Ghosty have to say to HyDra about potentially making this happen? But if HyDra is looking at other options, maybe Thieves isn't where he will be considering. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I greatly appreciate it. This is coming out in a couple of days time now, the Adidas Nadeshot collab. I think we saw this a little while ago actually, and honestly I think these are really clean. Like, I think we've seen the Drazah ones that he wore at the event, which are pretty cool if that's your taste. I prefer the slightly cleaner design and you know, the subtle just Nadeshot kind of branding on these, and the 100 Thieves branding I think is actually really nice. And the cool thing as well is that he gifted a pair to Scump, so here we go. Here's Scump kind of like opening the box they did on stream a couple of days ago. Now of course Nadeshot has his set and Scump got sent some as well, so I just thought this is a nice moment really here between the two boys, and you know, Scump was absolutely loving it. Of course you guys can see kind of the Nadeshot branding here on the tongue, and OpTic was thinking, damn, like, come on, could I got one or whatever. Maybe he will, of course, because part of 100 Thieves, as is Nadeshot, and potentially if you guys you know, purchase some of these, then maybe Nadeshot could put that money towards signing HyDra, because they might need him for next season, as we're going to discuss, because we know full well that the Los Angeles Thieves, they went down a more budget approach this year than they had done previously, and there's certainly been some talk on where and whether that is going to change in the near future. The league right now that we have is very interesting, because at the top of the league, you've got the teams that will actually spend money. OpTic are one of those, FaZe are one of those, but to probably a lesser extent than they used to be. The belief is that Simp and aBeZy certainly took pay cuts over the last few years so they could still team together, and they're raking in the prize money. So it's not, you know, it's not like I feel bad for them having to take pay cuts, because, you know, they're rinsing all the cash, and it is just the nature of esports as it stands. Toronto, they can still pay cash, but maybe not anything completely insane. Boston actually have really deep pockets, but you know, the rumor is that they offered Envoy, what, 400k last year to go and play for them, and he said no, he'd prefer to play for Toronto and win more, which was, you know, in hindsight, probably a justifiable decision, right? But Boston still have the cash, they just don't deliver with it, and changes I'm sure will be made over there to their organization in the near future to see that one turns around. Minnesota Rocker used to have some cash, now that's died down somewhat. Of course, they were GT, so maybe that can turn around. Seattle used to throw around the big bucks, that's now dropped off big time. Obviously, New York Subliners, they still have some money to spend. They paid HyDra whatever for this mega contract that he apparently is on. So, you know, there's a few teams that spend, and there's several teams that spend as, you know, little as they possibly can. So the league is in an interesting spot. But of course, the Los Angeles Thieves, after spending big when they first came in, I mean, they had to buy the spot. First of all, that wasn't cheap. Now that money's been rescinded, so that's good for Nadeshot and everything. Because remember when Nadeshot did that kind of famous tweet a couple of years ago saying that, wow, I was really pushing my board hard to get into COD because I thought it would be great, but you know, maybe I'm the fool or something, right? When the CDL wasn't working. I think in hindsight, it's turned out to have been a good decision for them, but they did have to drop the salaries of the Thieves guys going into this year in order to make that happen. So Kenny departed to OpTic, Drazah departed to FaZe, Envoy departed to Ultra, and then of course, well, the other man who departed was Octane to the retirement home, and well, potentially ruins the league, or whatever you want to say. So in their stead, they had to sign a brand new team from the ground up, and of course they didn't have the money to go and slap around and buy Dashy. This is his career card actually, so 7 finals appearances now, 3 tournament victories, 41 pro tournaments, etc, etc. A couple of guys here from Ultra as well, thought was kind of interesting. 28 pro tournaments now for CleanX. He's made 9 finals, won 5 of them. So, you know, the record, we talked about this yesterday, right? The fact that the record of CleanX and Insight in finals, well, at least there is a tendency for them to get slammed, or at least it doesn't go so well. But it's not like their finals record is bad. I mean, they've won, you know, half of the finals they've been in here, more than half. Best champs placing is second, of course, last season on that Toronto team, and even actually a couple of times now, right, when they were second back in Cold War to FaZe. This is Envoy, 12 finals, 6 championship victories. First, of course, best champs placing on that Los Angeles Thieves roster, which we're going to discuss right about now. Now, we've got to talk about HyDra as well and how he relates to these guys, because 2 of the key protagonists here are in attendance in the top 10 hardpoint engagements per 10 minutes list. So in a 10-minute period, how many engagements are you getting in hardpoints? this is why HyDra is so insane. Like, he's so far ahead of everyone. Like, everyone, Simp, Kenny, Scrap, Pred, even 04 and Flames, kind of new players, so sometimes with a relatively smaller sample size, you can get kind of outlier results like this. But even ReeaL, he's been playing very well as well. 47 engagements, 46 engagements per 10 minutes. That's kind of what you're looking at. HyDra's over 50, you know. Now, look, he's not getting any hill time, as you can tell. So he just runs around and gets kills. But, you know, he does a very good job running around and getting kills. HyDra, of course, now is a Call of Duty World Champion after last year on the Subliners, winning 3 events. But this year, Subliners haven't even got close. They were 3rd at Major 2 in Miami. They beat Toronto to knock them out top 4. New York then went on to lose to OpTic to end up, you know, OpTic made the finals. They lost to FaZe at Miami, and then the rest is history. But Subliners so far this season, they have been 3rd, they have been 4th, and they have been dead last at the first major of the season. Not good enough results for the reigning world champions, and even with Priestahh, would it have been a massively different story? There was a question on that just because, you know, is Skyz quite as impactful at this game as last year? Maybe not. Is Kismet as good as this game as last year? I don't think so. Is HyDra, you know, I still think he's phenomenal, but is he quite as good as last year? Maybe not. So, you know, the team has just been struggling given the fact that Toronto upgraded, possibly with Envoy, the fact that OpTic certainly upgraded, and the fact that you can probably say the same thing about FaZe as well. So if you're HyDra, you're probably looking at your career card and thinking, well, hang on a second, maybe I haven't as won enough. You're sure, world champion, won several events now, but you know, this season, if it's a bit of a write-off, you've got to think about what the future is. Now, a lot of it, of course, does depend on what the contracts say. We've talked about the same thing with Scrappy when the whole OpTic Scrappy thing was causing a lot of, you know, debate. That's kind of calmed down somewhat now, of course, understandably after the major, although, you know, some will still talk about it and maybe for understandable reasons. But Scrappy, if he isn't out of contract and isn't an unrestricted free agent, then he's beholden to somebody buying him out. And it's the same thing with HyDra possibly, which I believe is the case, that his deal is still on, you know, I think maybe it was a 2+1 that he signed or something like that. So they can still keep him on if they want to. Now, it doesn't mean that if HyDra wants to leave and someone wants to buy him out that they couldn't, but realistically, which teams have the money to buy HyDra out of his contract if they wanted to? There's only a couple you can really think about. Boston, surprisingly, is still one, but I don't know what they're going to do in the off-season, really, and I don't see HyDra really wanted to go there, nor anybody. Then you're looking at Ultra, that could have the funds, OpTic could have the funds, FaZe could have the funds, and apart from that, though, it's pretty low on the ground. And this is when it comes down to the Los Angeles Thieves discussion.
Somebody said they need another star SMG, and maybe
you don't just get a star.
You don't
Yeah,
just
it's
get
hard
one.
to find
You don't
that.
get one.
It's hard.
But yes, I could agree that maybe they could they could try to upgrade in the SMG category somewhere, because I feel like Joe plays his role well. I think Nasty doesn't have like a lot of pop-off series, but he's always contributing. Like he's always
He's
throwing
throwing
down
damage and he's in the right spot.
He throws down damage and stuff like that.
Well,
Gimme Gwyn. They're not getting Gwyn
They can't
anywhere
get Gwyn, but
anytime.
realistically, who would you get? Realistically, who would you pick up?
Like I'm just saying, like if they wanted to make a change for Kremp, I wouldn't be mad at them trying something, whether they do or not, because of how late it is in the season and how they played online, and them maybe having a little bit more faith in them carrying that forward. I don't know, but shit, I mean, with the way Kremp's playing and his up and down streaky playstyle, they just need another reliable piece, bro, to help Dan. Dan is fucking godlike.
Yeah.
Listen, if I'm Dan,
He's hella good.
The fact that he has
He's
not,
insane.
the
Dan's
fact that
insane.
he has not had at least a top 6 this year is fucking mind blowing.
Dan is fucking
if I'm
crazy.
Dan, I am sliding in Paco's DMs over the next month and a half and convincing this guy.
That's
This is how I
insane.
do that.
Paco.
If you're Dan, you're trying to sketch on your team in
Paco's
season.
I'm
not
trying to
going
get
to
Paco to
Thieves.
sketch
Paco's
on New York.
contract starts with
First
a
off,
5. You
Thieves
think
can't
they're
even
going to
afford
Thieves?
Paco.
Paco's
Yeah,
contract is that whole roster put
You
together.
think Matt would pay for Paco?
He's fucking
Wait, but
try.
if Paco wanted to come to Thieves, you don't think?
No, hell no.
Dan-
He's not gonna
They
work
can't
out.
afford Paco.
If
They're not
Dan
gonna
is
pay for
sliding in
Paco.
DMs, if Dan is sliding into Paco's DMs, he's not saying, "Yo, come
Paco's
join the
leaving him on
Thieves."
red.
He's like, "Yo,
Save
get me off the
Yes.
Thieves."
Yeah,
Yo, Dante's
yeah.
not that good, bro.
100%. That's insane.
So you can certainly see a world in which HyDra is looking at this Subliners team, looking at their results and thinking, damn, you know, I should be doing better than this, and considering his options going forward, because HyDra is considered by the fans and certainly by the players to be an unbelievable talent. World Championship MVP last year, absolutely hands down. So where would he go in this scenario? There were questions raised about this on the Reddit as well here by the Lava Reaper saying, like, if New York doesn't win, where does he go? What makes the most sense? And I do agree that if he was to go to one of the top 3, Ultra does make the most sense. Like, to me, HyDra and CleanX as a sub-duo reminds me a fair bit of Pred and Shotzzy, and we talked about that earlier on today in terms of the fact that that is now working really well at the major. Now, look, HyDra and CleanX might not have the same comms and energy that Pred and Shotzzy have, which seemingly brought the most out of them at the major, but it's still something to think about, that if Ultra really want to go to the next level, because, you know, right now they're up there, they're arguably S-tier Ultra, but are they quite as good as they could be? Do they need a bit more firepower given how stacked it is with FaZe and OpTic? Maybe, and, you know, New York Subliners could be in a position to sell HyDra, but, you know, then New York are probably never going to win an event, right, if you do that. So that's your problem, really, especially if you're HyDra, given that the contracts have to be resolved. Of course, the other question, though, is on the Los Angeles Thieves. This is what the flank guys were talking about. If you're Dan Ghosty, what do you do? Because his numbers here, like, they look very, you know, admirable, and they are really impressive. But I think just watching Ghosty's POV and watching their games, you know that Ghosty's kind of doing it all at times for this Thieves team, and if he had someone else, like as they said, if they had one more like consistent Slayer, Crimp is good when he's on, but he's a bit up and down. Nasty is solid, but is probably not going to do anything crazy in terms of the slaying. If they had an upgrade somewhere here, then maybe they could be a serious threat. And obviously, HyDra for Crimp on paper would be very nice, but it's one of those changes that feels extremely unlikely. But this is what Ghosty has to think about and what he has to do, because, you know, HyDra may not be able to leave the Subliners. He may still be under contract. Nobody may want to pay the money to buy him out of his deal, such as Trons Walter, for example, if they were to lose the World Championship or want to upgrade. So then if you're HyDra, you're thinking, okay, maybe I need to improve my team. And that is when Ghosty could potentially come into the mix. So it goes two ways. Either HyDra will be stuck on New York, assuming they don't do so well, and he feels stuck on New York, but then, of course, he has the keys, right, to make roster changes if he would like, and maybe Dan Ghosty's an option there, but of course, Thieves would want to keep him around. And if Thieves somehow get some money back, I mean, you got to think, the franchise payments are coming back to these teams. There is a possibility that these teams have some more cash to throw around now than they did before. Maybe some of these organizations will start to bump the salaries back up again to some degree going into next year. I kind of doubt it, but it's possible that Thieves could, you know, level it up a little bit, get back in the game somewhat with the teams that they were competing with championships over the last few years, and now they're, you know, struggling to make it to the World Championship. But of course, if you are Thieves, you've got to keep Dan Ghosty around, because the entire purpose of this year was to execute the rebuild. To some extent, you've done that. You've found some good pieces. You know, I think Joe Thieves is just getting better and better. Ghosty, of course, is a great player. The jury's out on Crimp, I think, and Nasty, I think, is solid, but maybe he's not been quite as good in this team as I thought that he might be. Their control is still rather suspect. But anyway, they're finding pieces, these are what they want to do for next season. But if Ghosty leaves and goes to Subliners or something, then all of a sudden you're back to square one, unless you've got money to actually throw around. So very much interested in your thoughts in the comments below. Just to quickly look at it, if this actually wants to load, this is the calendar for the qualifiers. So going up to this game here, Vegas versus OpTic is the last game of this weekend. But there are actually quite a few games this weekend. No more 2-match Fridays, thank God. We have 3 matches Friday. I think we even have 4 matches Saturday. Yeah, we have 4 games on the Saturday, including Miami versus OpTic, which is obviously going to be rather interesting. And then I think we have 4 games on the Sunday as well. So yeah, qualifiers are going to be stacked to the brim in these upcoming weeks, which is, you know, good to see there's actually some matches in play. Okay, late nights over again in Europe, but whatever, it is what it is. We get one stage, I suppose, to deal with that, but of course all the teams are going to be in action this weekend. So very much interested in your thoughts on all this stuff in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.
Seth, if you were a real living and breathing wet vagina, do you think you'd let me fuck you?
Hypothetically speaking, if I dressed up like a worm and inched across the floor, could I get inside of your ass?
Holy shit. Are you leaving a trail behind you? A trail of goo?